Hello again, my hobby horn dogs. Rodge here as always. I've got another tutorial for you today. This one is on freehand shields. So if you're doing any sort of medieval or fantasy type models, spending a little extra time on the shields is one particular way to get those little bastards to pop. So this is going to be the first part of a two-part series where we take a closer look at how I did these freehand shields, and this could actually, I guess, work on banners or shoulder pads or any kind of two-dimensional image on a miniature surface. So you can see how I did it, and if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post those in the comments. But basically, this first video, we'll take a really in-depth look at how I did one particular shield, and then the second video will be a little quicker and show all the, probably another 5 or 7 different shields that I did. And hopefully you can see the different techniques and colors that I use, get some good ideas. But let's take a look at that.
All right, horn dogs, we got our Saxon Thane or the Alderman type fella here. You can see looks pretty good. Looks pretty plain. I added a little green stuff hoodie to his little chainmail jumper there. So I ended up going a little blander on the colors on a lot of these guys to kind of, I'm gonna let the shields pop. So I'm assuming their clothing will probably, you know, they have, even if they have nicer color, stuff's gonna fade over time, but the shields would probably be more like freshly painted for the upcoming battle. So that's the general idea that I had with these guys. So I'm going to use a couple different brushes. Mostly I like this guy here. It's like a flat brush there. I'm going to zoom in there. Rosemary #2, Company and Sable. So you can see it's I don't think it's a filbert, but some kind of flathead. It's pretty good for going making nice even highlights on the shields. And then if I have to do more complicated stuff, there's #2, Rosemary, Workbench Warrior brush. So for this particular guy, I'm going to use 3 different colors. Most of the shields I've just been doing 2, but I can show you a couple different things by getting a little bit more elaborate with this bro here. So I'm going to do kind of a white cross, and then I want to do kind of like a red and black into the 4 quarters there. So you can see I haven't gone around the edge of the shield, and that's because when you're doing this technical stuff, you don't want to have to worry about fucking up the edges. So okay, so for me, the best results that I've gotten when painting these is keeping my paint a little thicker and like less runny than usual. So you can kind of just keep working on it and do it all in one go, so you don't have to wait for anything to dry. So I'm starting with, this is G-Dub Administrative Gray. So we're just trying to get the basic outline of that cross. And then once I do that, I will be able to get, you can see I'm not too crazy about precision at this point. I'm just going to take probably at least one other coat of this gray. But this first one I'm just trying to get out. I'm trying to make everything even, so it looks pretty even actually. Maybe I'll thicken this one up a little bit, but that's about it. Okay. So that's actually looking pretty good. Maybe this corner over here could use a little bit more. So got that laid down. So it looks like it's pretty much dried already, which is good. So I'm going to go in and try to keep in the lines. If we don't, I'm going to be going back and doing the red and the blacks, so it's not a big deal. Just a little bit more. Okay, so that looks decent. It's not perfect, and I would have been making them, if you look on the back, the way that crossbar is, you'd assume that this would be the, actual the upside, so the axis is a little different, but I've just been painting them all for consistency, just making the crosses, kind of basically standing straight at, but if it was realistic, you'd probably have them at different angles, so they kind of, look more like X's or something like that, but okay, so that's good. So I'm done with this pointy brush here. So for the red, it's actually going to be more like a maroon kind of color, like a dark red. So using this charred brown, scorched brown for Vallejo, lays a really nice base for that one. Which is actually, well, yeah, I've already painted that color, so I guess I can probably just skip that step. I might do another layer, just it doesn't look totally even. So I'm going to go back. We'll make these ones be the reds. Let's make sure I got a nice even coat of brown there. Okay, so once again, I'm almost just using the paint straight out of the bottle, just so it dries quicker. Now you do need to make sure that shit doesn't cake up. So for the black, just using my old standby walnut brown here, 09136. So this one is actually more like a dark gray. And then we'll use a couple of washes to make it look black. So you can see with the big brush, it's pretty nice. You can almost get the whole shield in one go. Or one whole quarter of it. Okay. It looks pretty good. I might have went over the line a bit on this side, but it's not a big deal. So after this is all done, we're going to go black line it. So if we do go over a little bit, we do have a little bit of leeway. So let's go back to the red. And for the dark red, this is dark flesh. This is basically as red as it's going to get. but I really like how it looks with the scorched brown. And okay, so for doing these checks, the way that it looks the best is to kind of do a gradient in both checks. So realistically, the gradient would be from the top all the way to the bottom, but we're going to go, so from dark all the way up to light. But for it just looks better if you do dark to light and then dark to light. And it's probably not really realistic, but it just looks good. Okay. So you can see using this thing makes everything nice and even. So now I'm just going to mix the two colors. And again, I'm not using hardly any water. So as long as you can get it on the first try, it's not going to look too cakey. Hopefully. And let's add a bit more brown. So you can see that pretty simple, already looking pretty good. Let me think. It's easier if you can get it all and go from light to dark and then not have to go back and fill anything in. Because once you start having to kind of smooth the transitions, you're kind of guessing at how much of each color would be appropriate for that level. So I'm just going to do a little bit more red. It's mostly all red. We'll get a little bit of water. Just get a little bit more red popping up here. Maybe smooth it just a bit more. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, so I am going to go back and do a wash, but just in the very bottom areas. But the washes are the last thing you want to do on the shields, because you don't want to be sitting there waiting for the wash to dry. And if you do get a little impatient, you can really fuck things up. So the red already looks good. So we'll just do kind of the black side then. So it's looking kind of gray. All I'm going to do is add just a smidge of ivory, or you could use gray too. Doesn't really matter, any kind of lighter color. And just to get a little bit of a transition. Mostly we're going to go back and do some washes on the black. It's looking pretty good. The walnut brown kind of, it's a little deceptive once it dries. It ends up being a little grayer than it looks. So I'm just going to get a little bit more. Can I go back? Oops. It's alright for that. Okay. So it looks pretty good. It's pretty subtle, but that'll do. Let's see how it looks at normal light. Pull it away here. Looks good. Sometimes it helps to look at some under a couple different lights to see how the transition looks. So that is pretty good. Okay, we're going to switch back to pointy. So we're going to go back to the middle. So when you're doing those lines like that, a little more cream. Yeah, you could do a transition from top to bottom. Again, doing something that isn't necessarily realistic seems to look pretty good on these. So with these lines, actually, I just highlight each side. And then in the middle, I just leave that kind of darker in the middle. And then the same for the ones on the side. Although I kind of emphasize the top line on the ones on the side. So got some ivory. Looks like it might be a bit too stark. Give it a go. Alright. And it's a little thicker there, but I'm gonna go back. Okay, so it's looking all right. I'm gonna add a little gray to this ivory. And do a little transition, at least between them. Depending on how much paint's on your brush, sometimes the ivory will dry pretty translucent, but okay, I'm just going all in. I'm actually going to go back and do a wash on the creamy ivory shit as well. Alright, it's still looking pretty good. I'm just going to wait a little bit. I want to do another layer. Try it kind of translucent. Yeah, a little bit more gray, methinks. Alright, that's looking pretty good. I think I actually want to go back. Highlight the edges of that cross just a little bit more. Usually I get it all in the first try, but I suppose when you have video. Alrighty. That's looking pretty good. Alright, so let's do just a couple washes, get a little bit more depth going on here. So, just going to use Earthshade on the red. I'm actually going to add a little, maybe like a 50-50 of that and Dragon off. And then I'll actually even thin it down with some Lame Medium so I can get a little bit more control. Alrighty. Just a little dab of Dragon, huh? Okay. That's probably even too much. I'm actually going to put it in the black too. Work around the edges there a bit. Okay. Let's do a little line there. Okay, so there's a little bit much on there, but I'm just going to leave it and see how it dries. So for the, just kind of hold them up just so that it doesn't run. So for the kind of the ivory white shit, I actually like using the old Griffin sepia. So this is like the least kind of heavy wash that there is. So even just using it undiluted just doesn't seem like there's hardly any pigment in there. So I'm just going to kind of go down the middle. So subtle. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm going to do one more layer of the Griffin sepia. Just on the bottom and on the sides. I'm going to leave the top. So it will be just a smidge darker. Just going to wait till it looks like it's dried. Alright, so come on, baby, you better be dry. If you have a light bulb that is not one of those fluorescents, but actually putting out heat, you can just hold it up. That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to hold it up to this light bulb and hopefully cook that wash a little quicker. Alright, so that's good. It's just a bit darker. Maybe still a little bit more on the wings. The side ones. Decent. Okay, so I think the dark red looks good. Now, since it's kind of looking more gray to me, I might just be okay with gray. At one time, I will use the Nuln Oil is when I'm actually trying to paint black. So let me, this is looking a little bit more gray, but let me just look at it in a different light. And actually, I think that looks pretty good. I think a dark gray is fine. So if I want to go totally black, I would just do a little bit of Nuln Oil and then work on this transition. And I don't think I need to do that. I think that looks pretty good. And we can move on to the next step, which would be doing just the rim of the shield and the boss. So I'm just going to do this as quick as I can so I can show you the last step, which is doing the black lining to make that design nice and clean and to make it pop. Okay, so I'm trying to go quick, but I'm trying to be careful too. It's because if you have to redo any of that design, it fucking sucks balls. Alright, so boss looks good. Okay, one thing with these War Games factory shields, it's the lip between the edge of the shield and the actual front of the shield is really faint. So you almost have to like paint it on. And it kind of sucks because you want this to look perfectly round, but you're just kind of doing your best guess as to where the edge of the shield begins. Again, I'm trying not to use too much water. When we're doing the black lining, it's going to be really important that the paint be totally dry. Say if I was doing a bunch of these, which I will, I'll probably do this metal part all at the same time, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, then normally when I'm doing this too, I'd be going around the edge of the shield. You're doing the sides here. and around the edge and the back. And I'd actually do a wash before I went to this last step, but okay, that's looking pretty good. This guy's shield is pretty dope. Okay, so now we're going to do a black lining. So you can do it with a brush. It's kind of hard getting a universal thickness, so I'm actually going to use a micron pen. So I'll use these from time to time. I haven't used one for a long time until I started doing this shield project on these Saxons. So you can actually, if you wanted to, you could, it's got a .005 tip, so it's friggin' tiny. So you could even blackline the whole model, like between the chainmail and everything. It's kind of futzy. And it takes a little practice. You might want to mess around on something else, but okay. So when you're doing this, it helps. You can't see, but my hands are braced on the edge of a desk here. So I am going to do this in little strokes. Like that. And I'm just going to turn the shield to okay. That one looked alright. It looks like a so if your lines are a little thicker at one end or something at this point, you can fix it. So I ended up getting it a little thicker in the middle, so I'm just going to go back and make the whole line a little thicker. Alright. Now if it's not completely dry here, the tip is going to get gunked up super easily. Trouble getting them right. And then once it gets gunked up, you almost have to let it sit, let the pen sit for a while until it dries completely. Alright. It's coming along. Okay, so I did the straight lines there. And then now I'm going to go around the boss and then go around the edge. So, like I was mentioning before, it's friggin' really difficult to figure out where the stuff begins and ends on here. So you're really kind of guessing. And if you do mess up, you can always go back and fix it. With the transitions and everything, it might sometimes it's easier to almost just completely paint over it and start from scratch. It's a little messy up here. Okay, so I'm gonna smooth that out a bit. There we go. Looking decent so far. So one thing is when you're up really close and you make little mistakes and stuff, it looks kind of crappy, but when you pull back and look at it, you know, from a foot away, it looks perfectly fine. So my last step here, trying to figure out where the curve begins and ends here. Okay, boosh. So I got a little bit more work to do on the shield. I'm gonna go around, paint the sides I didn't get to, do a wash, do a little highlighting, and then I'll show you a photo of the finished guy.
Hey nerds, hope that got your creative juices flowing. If you have any questions about the techniques or anything, go ahead, leave a comment. I'll answer it if I can. If you have any tips for me on what you saw and what I could do better, I would definitely be interested in that as well. I'm not a professional, just a big fan of the miniature painting scene. And I will have a second video showing some other freehand shields that I did for these Anglo-Saxons. And check that out. Like, favorite this shit, become a hobby horn dog today.